Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling physical literacy. You know, that idea of being comfortable and confident moving your body. It's a hot topic, but also kind of confusing one. We're going to sift through some academic papers you've shared to help figure out, is physical literacy just a fancy new term for PE, or is there something more to it?
There's definitely a lot of debate around that. What's interesting is that how we define physical literacy actually shapes how we approach movement and activity,
Hmm.
both in school and throughout life. So this deep dive isn't just about words. It's about understanding how we help people, especially kids, develop a healthy relationship with being active.
Okay. So right off the bat, several of these studies point out that some experts think the term physical literacy is actually counterproductive. The authors of the 2016 paper, Semantics, Physical Education versus Physical Literacy, went so far as to say it might be doing more harm than good. Why such a strong reaction?
Well, they argue that the term is causing a lot of confusion among teachers. And that's a problem because if teachers don't understand what physical literacy is, how can they teach it effectively? The study even suggests that this confusion might actually be hindering efforts to get kids more active.
And this confusion isn't just limited to that one paper. Several other studies found the same thing. For example, one study analyzed a bunch of research papers on physical activity in schools and discovered that there's often no clear distinction between what's considered physical education and what's considered physical literacy. It's all kind of lumped together.
Exactly. And that lack of clarity can have real consequences. If researchers and educators aren't on the same page about what they're studying and teaching, it becomes much harder to develop effective programs and measure their impact.
So we've got this potentially game-changing concept,
Yeah.
but even the experts can't seem to agree on what it means. It makes you wonder, how are teachers supposed to navigate this? They're busy people. Do they have time to become experts on the nuances of physical literacy?
Many teachers rely on quick searches online for professional development. But that's where things get even trickier. A 2021 study actually looked at how physical literacy is presented online, and they found a ton of conflicting information. Imagine being a teacher trying to get a handle on this concept and being bombarded with all these different definitions and approaches. It's no wonder there's confusion.
Yeah, talk about information overload. And that brings us to this 2018 study, which really blew my mind. Physical literacy misunderstandings. What do leading physical education teachers know about physical literacy? They interviewed experienced, well-respected PE teachers.
And even they couldn't give a clear, consistent definition of physical literacy.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, what are we actually measuring here? And how can we expect teachers to implement a concept they can't even define?
Right, and if teachers are struggling, that's going to trickle down to the kids. How can we expect students to develop these skills if the instruction is all over the place? It's like sending someone on a road trip without a map or a clear destination.
That's a great analogy.
Hmm.
And it highlights why this lack of clarity is such a big deal. We're not just talking about semantics here. We're talking about potentially shortchanging kids when it comes to developing essential skills for a healthy and active life.
And speaking of getting shortchanged, the semantics paper from 2016 also raised another interesting point. They're concerned that in trying to make physical literacy more practical and easy to implement, we might be oversimplifying it. They call this a reductionist approach.
Here's what's fascinating about that critique. By trying to make physical literacy more digestible, we might actually be stripping away some of its richness and potential. It's like trying to explain a complex scientific theory in a tweet. You're going to lose some of the nuance and depth.
So on the one hand, we have all this confusion about what physical literacy even means, and on the other hand, there's a risk of watering it down so much that it loses its power. It seems like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. What are we supposed to do with this, as someone trying to understand and maybe even apply these ideas?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think the first step is to acknowledge that there are different interpretations of physical literacy. Some people see it as an extension of PE, while others view it as a much broader concept that encompasses not just physical skills, but also attitudes, confidence, and motivation.
Okay, so multiple perspectives are at play here, but are there any common threads? Any core components that most people agree on when it comes to defining physical literacy? Or is it just a free-for-all?
There are definitely some areas of agreement. Most definitions of physical literacy emphasize the development of fundamental movement skills,
Mm.
like running, jumping, throwing, catching, and balancing.
Hmm.
These are the building blocks for more complex movements and activities later in life.
So it's not just about being athletic or sporty, it's about having a foundation of basic movement skills that allow you to participate in a wide range of activities throughout your life. Makes sense.
Right. And beyond those basic skills, Physical literacy also involves developing what's often called movement competence.
Hmm.
This means being able to adapt and modify your movements to different situations and environments. Think about navigating a crowded sidewalk or playing a game with friends. You need to be able to adjust your movements on the fly.
I'm starting to see how this goes way beyond just PE class. It's about being comfortable and confident, moving your body in all sorts of situations throughout your life.
Exactly, and that confidence and motivation are key components of physical literacy as well. It's not just about being able to do something. It's about wanting to do it and feeling good about yourself while you're doing it.
So it's about developing a positive relationship with movement and activity,
Yeah.
not just seeing it as something you have to do, but something you enjoy and choose to do.
Precisely. And that's where the real magic of physical literacy lies. When you feel confident and competent in your body, you're more likely to be active, explore new activities, and embrace a healthy lifestyle. It really can have a ripple effect on all aspects of your life.
Okay, this is starting to make a lot more sense. So it sounds like the confusion around the term physical literacy isn't necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it just reflects the fact that this is a complex concept with multiple layers and interpretations.
That's a great way to put it. It's not about finding the one right definition. It's about understanding the different perspectives and how they inform our approach to promoting physical activity.
So how do we move forward with this, knowing that there's no simple answer, no one-size-fits-all approach? Where do we go from here? I think this is where things get really interesting. We've talked about the challenges of defining physical literacy, but let's shift gears and talk about solutions. What can we do to make sure this concept is being understood and implemented effectively so that kids actually benefit?
Well, I think a big part of it is moving beyond just talking about physical literacy and actually putting it into practice. We need to create opportunities for kids to develop these skills in a variety of settings, not just in PE class.
So it's about creating a culture of movement that extends beyond the gym walls. But how do we do that? Where do we even start?
One place to start is by looking at the physical environment. Do kids have safe and accessible places to play? Are there parks, playgrounds, bike paths, and other spaces where they can be active?
That's a good point. If we want kids to be active,
Hmm.
we need to make sure they have places where they can actually be active. It's not just about having programs, it's about having the infrastructure in place to support those programs.
Right, and it's not just about the physical environment. We also need to think about the social environment. Do families encourage and support physical activity? Are there community programs that cater to a variety of interests and abilities?
I see what you mean. It's about creating a supportive ecosystem where kids feel encouraged and empowered to move their bodies. It's not just about telling them to be active. It's about creating an environment where being active is the easy choice, the fun choice.
Exactly. And that environment needs to be inclusive too. We need to make sure that all kids,
Hmm.
regardless of their background,
Mhm.
abilities, or interests, have the opportunity to develop physical literacy.
So it's not just about creating opportunities, it's about creating equitable opportunities.
Mhm.
Everyone should have a chance to experience the joy and benefits of movement.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the role of teachers in all of this. They're the ones on the front lines, working with kids every day. They need the knowledge, skills, and resources to effectively integrate physical literacy into their teaching.
You're bringing us back to that teacher confusion we talked about earlier. How do we equip teachers to handle this complex concept?
High-quality professional development is essential. We need to provide teachers with clear, concise information about what physical literacy is, why it's important, and how to teach it in a way that's engaging and effective.
So it's about empowering teachers, giving them the tools and the confidence to be champions of physical literacy in their classrooms and schools.
Right. And it's not just about giving them information. It's about giving them practical strategies and resources they can actually use. Things like lesson plans, assessment tools,
Yeah.
and examples of successful programs.
I love that. It's about making it as easy as possible for teachers to implement physical literacy. So it becomes a natural part of their teaching, not just another thing they have to squeeze into their already busy schedules.
Exactly. And we can't underestimate the power of collaboration in all of this. Teachers, parents, community leaders, policymakers, we all need to be working together to create this supportive ecosystem for physical literacy.
It's like a giant puzzle, and we all have a piece to contribute.
That's a great analogy. And when all those pieces come together, the picture becomes much clearer and the impact is much greater.
Okay, we've talked about the importance of environments, teacher training, and collaboration. But what about the kids themselves? How can we make sure they're actually engaged and motivated to develop these skills?
That's where things get really exciting. We need to make sure that physical activity is fun and engaging for kids.
Mm.
If it feels like a chore, they're not going to want to do it.
Makes sense. No one wants to do something that feels like work, especially kids.
Right. So we need to find ways to make movement joyful and playful.
Mhm.
We need to tap into kids' natural curiosity and love of exploration. We need to give them opportunities to try new things, challenge themselves, and experience the thrill of success.
So it's about moving away from the traditional model of PE, where kids are told what to do and how to do it, and towards a more child-centered approach where they have more choice and autonomy.
Exactly. We need to create environments where kids feel empowered to take ownership of their physical literacy journey. We need to give them the freedom to explore, experiment,
Mhm.
and discover what types of movement they enjoy the most.
I imagine this approach also helps to build intrinsic motivation. When kids are having fun and feel a sense of ownership, they're more likely to stick with it, even when things get challenging.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that every child is different. What motivates one child might not motivate another. So we need to offer a variety of activities and approaches to cater to different interests and learning styles.
So it's about finding the right fit for each child, recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to physical literacy.
Precisely. And it's not just about finding the right activity. It's about finding the right environment, the right teacher, the right support system.
It's about creating a personalized experience that meets each child where they're at and helps them grow and develop at their own pace.
That's beautifully said. It's about recognizing that physical literacy is a journey, not a destination. And it's a journey that should be filled with joy, discovery, and a sense of accomplishment.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from this conversation about solutions? What's the most important message you want to leave them with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that physical literacy is about so much more than just physical skills. It's about developing a positive relationship with movement, a sense of confidence and competence in your body, and a lifelong love of being active.
I couldn't agree more. It's about empowering kids to move through the world with ease and enjoyment, to embrace challenges, and to experience the joy of movement in all its forms.
And it's something that we can all contribute to, whether we're teachers, parents,
Yeah.
community leaders, or simply caring adults who want to see kids thrive. We can create those supportive environments, provide those opportunities, and be those positive role models.
And remember, it's not about perfection. It's about progress, about celebrating those small wins, and about encouraging kids to keep exploring, keep moving, and keep growing.
I love that. It's not about being the best, it's about being your best, whatever that looks like for you. And that message applies to all of us, not just kids. We can all benefit from embracing the principles of physical literacy and finding ways to make movement a joyful and meaningful part of our lives.
It's never too late to start. You can begin by simply noticing how you move throughout your day, what feels good, what feels challenging, what brings you joy.
That's a great suggestion. It's about being mindful of our bodies and finding ways to move that feel authentic and enjoyable for us.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming. It can be as simple as taking a walk in nature, dancing to your favorite music, or playing a game with your kids.
Exactly. And the more we move, the more confident and competent we become, and the more likely we are to continue making movement a part of our lives. It's a positive feedback loop.
And who knows, maybe by embracing physical literacy ourselves, we can inspire the next generation to do the same. We can be the change we want to see in the world, one step, one jump, one dance move at a time.
I love that vision. It's about creating a ripple effect of movement,
Yeah.
joy, and well-being that spreads throughout our communities and beyond.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into physical literacy, I want to leave you with a question to ponder. We've talked a lot about how schools can implement physical literacy. But what about the role of parents and families? How can they support their kids' physical literacy development outside of school? What can you do as a listener to bring these ideas to life in your own home and community?
That's a great question to reflect on, and I encourage you to continue exploring this topic,
Hmm.
to seek out resources, and to connect with others who are passionate about physical literacy. There's a whole world of movement out there waiting to be discovered, and it's never too late to start exploring. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into physical literacy. Until next time, keep moving and keep learning.